Moving on, I think you mentioned about the IBC, Mr. Mohan. So I just wanted to pick up further on that uh, and raise this question to Mr. Kamath. See, the RBI has again given a breather of, I think, 9 months. It was again extended that no cases can be referred to under IBC to NCLT. So, will this not impact, the lenders or the genuine creditors?
Prakash, Mohan briefly mentioned about the background of why IBC, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, was
Yes.
introduced in the year 2016. As he rightly mentioned, it is not to liquidate the companies. It is to help them to revive, restructure the debt, maximize the value of their assets, and at the same time balance the interest of various stakeholders. This was the objective for which the IBC code was, implemented, and the NCLT became the implementing, agency. Now we all know that COVID has now snowballed into a huge economic, crisis, and we are also aware most of all, all of our, as a banker, we are aware of the importance of trade, industry, and commerce, which is the engines of growth in in any economy. And pandemic has impacted one and all in our country. As I mentioned, it has impacted even the best of blue chip companies. And we are also aware that it takes a number of years and an Herculean and Himalayan effort to build an organization and to build a quality organization. And therefore, it is absolutely necessary that we should not force any premature death of any business entity. It will lead to a huge national wealth loss. And with this in mind, the government of India, with the help to save viable business entities, came out with a decision that no new, I am referring, no new references could be made to NCLT after 25th of March 2020, initially for a period of 6 months, which will end on 25th of September 2020. And as promised, bills were placed in the parliament, passed by both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha in the recently concluded session. Now, just 2 or 3 days back, the time has been further extended by another 3 months till 25th of December 2020. Under the IBC, reference could be made under Section 7 by the financial creditors, under Section 9 by the operation creditors, and under Section 10 of the IBC by the promoters themselves, for relief under the scheme. What is now intended is that under all these three schemes, no new references could be made. Now, this extension is now ending on 25th of December 2020, and the Act amendment provides further extension by another 3 months. Now, there is some misunderstanding as to what this has resulted in. Let me clarify a few things. All the CIRPs, corporate insolvency resolution plans, referred to by under the IBC to the NCLT on or before 25th March. Before 25th March 2020 will continue unhindered, right?
Okay.
And any defaults committed before 25th March 2020 for those CIRPs could be filed even now. It is only the COVID stressed accounts which cannot be dragged under the IBC. So it must be very clearly understood by all of us. Similarly, proceeding under IBC against personal guarantee is also not prohibited. Now, the unintended adverse impact could be Some of them which strikes to my mind is unviable units which cannot be turned around, have to meet their logical end in the form of liquidation. Now it is possible that reference of such unviable, grossly unviable units, things which are beyond repair, reference to NCLT could be delayed.
Right.
And this could result in further deterioration in the value of assets.
Correct.
So this is the second consequence. Third consequence, according to me, is operational creditors. Their interest could be adversely affected. Banks can still go under SARFAESI, move under SARFAESI against the debtors. So there is a relative disadvantage for the operational creditors. Therefore, this decision has positives, has some unintended adverse impacts also. Overall, it's a great decision, excellent decision, so that viable units are not killed prematurely.
Right.
This is my take on this. Now RBI has come out with a one-time restructuring. Therefore, most of the cases could be resolved. Experience so far, as of March 2020, 3,774 cases were referred, out of which only 221 cases were resolved. Means where some resolution plans were approved. 914 cases out of the 3,774 cases as on 31st March 2020 ended up in liquidation. Therefore, resolution percentage vis-a-vis the total reference is not very great or satisfactory.
Okay.
In 2019, the banks could recover about 40 to 43% of the debt, which means almost 50 to 47% kind of a haircut. But one must realize that in India, for resolving and recovering through the judicial process, according to some research report, takes anywhere between 4 to 4.5 years, and the recovery made is less than 20%. Therefore, under IBC, the experience is that you are able to recover thus far 40%. Going forward, it may come down.
Yeah.
And the period within which it can be resolved is less than 1 year. IBC mandates that it should be resolved within 180 days plus another 90 days extra, 270 days, etc., etc. But there are, on the ground cases which are, pending beyond that. But experience thus far is that within 1 year's time, if everybody cooperates, everybody gels, there is a resolution that is, possible. But there are some challenges also, which I think our, audience must also understand. As far as I remember, as on date, there are 27, NCLTs. But there are huge number of cases pending, before them, and therefore it takes longer time for the resolution to, happen, and therefore there is a need to, increase the number of NCLT, benches. The promoters and other interested parties, move courts, challenging the whole, process under the IBC, and therefore it delays.
Right.
Section 238 of the IBC says that it has overriding powers over all other laws in the country. In the PML Act also, it seems there is a similar provision. So which law will prevail, we are not sure. Right. So the decisions given under the IBC are, being challenged by other regulators under the, PML Act, etc., etc. There should be, the clarity on this. Ultimately, this is a well-intended scheme, saving the, national wealth. So we need a clarity and finality as far as these things are, concerned. In current situation, finding a bidder under the NCLT process is going to be extremely, difficult. Even successful bidders are asking for more time.
Mm.
They are also seeking downward revision of the price, earlier agreed. And there is also a need for placing a cap on number of cases handled by a resolution professional so that delays are eliminated. Last 2 points which I would like to say is that we should not treat everybody with the same yardstick. MSMEs must have a separate resolution mechanism under IBC. Simplified procedure, small units, protect their interest to the extent possible, and protect their investment, find ways and means, how they can be allowed to continue to be in control of the business entity. Something like this needs to be looked into. In fact, the finance minister had announced that they are on the job in finding out a separate mechanism for MSME. I'm sure it is work in progress and some final decision will come. Lastly, like we find in USA and UK, pre-packaged, resolution plan before moving the NCLT, the borrower and the lenders and possible investors must sit together, evolve a mutually acceptable solution, and then only move the court so that the delays will get mitigated, decisions will come early. So such pre-packaged schemes, if it is possible, that is something which the country must attempt. This is my take on the NCLT and our experience thus far. Sorry for being a little more elaborative on this.
No,
Yeah.
but I would like to supplement two more things. What Mr. Kamath said, it's very very important that you treat the enterprise as a national wealth, and it is the resolution of the enterprise and not the resolution for promoters.
Mm.
So in the all other earlier resolutions, the promoters were getting saved of their scheme. In the IBC, the thrust is on saving the enterprise agnostic of the promoter, and that is how the RPs are taking over the management or change of the management. It's happening smoothly. So it's a promoter agnostic. That's a very good point in the IBC. The second point, which I will say with regard to the moratorium, this extension of 3 months or earlier 6 months. See, all operational creditors, if they are the viable unit, they can go back to their banker. Hey, here are my receivables, which I am not getting, and I am also not allowed to go to NCLT. So please fund me under the new restructuring scheme. I'm very sure the banks will give cognizance to it. That's all I wanted to add.
No, rightly said. I think the move is well intended. The survival is the first priority. And of course, there will be some drawbacks, as Mr. Kamath also mentioned. Yeah, so I think moving on, I'll just take a couple of more points quickly because we are running out of time, and then we will go to question and answer session. I think there are a lot of questions on the chat, so just a couple of points. Let's try to quickly cover. One is I wanted to just talk about the ARC, the asset reconstruction companies. So
Mhm.
the ARCs have come a long way actually from the initial conceptualization during 2002, 2003. Now it has reached to almost 1 lakh crore asset under management, and we have roughly 25 plus ARCs which are set up in the government and private sector. So, at a very broad level, how was the experience of the banks have been with regard to the ARCs? Mr. Mohan, if you can just briefly
Yeah, yeah.
explain that, then.
So I think you have already covered the statistics part where around 29 ARCs are functional today with the 1 lakh crore of AUM. But it took quite a time to really establish a win-win situation between the lender and the ARCs. Say the ARCs are essentially a specialized institution whose focus is only resolution and whose focus is not to buy the asset at a very low price and make the money out of it. yes, you have to make the money out of it, but the focus should not be that somehow I get the. So it all started with that. Whether your price discovery was the biggest challenge to start with. Then to address the price discovery, we came on the e-auctioning of the assets, pool assets or the individual asset. So valuation of the assets, pricing of the asset, selling at a particular price was a real challenge in the initial stages, where probably most of these things are now getting straightened out, and that is how there is a jump in the OEM. But
Mm,
what has been the real challenge for the ARCs is that initially they were required to give only 5% cash and 95% through the security receipts.
mm,
But today they are required to offer 15% cash and 85% as the security receipts. So when you have to say a 1 lakh crore AUM, the ARCs have to have their own capital of 15 lakh, 15,000 crore
thousand.
to pass it on to the bankers as cash. And thus this has been a challenge, but I think 100% FDI is permitted in the ARCs, and many big funds are looking to support the ARCs. Uh, there are, I mean, few ARCs which are a very nominal size. There are few ARCs which are really big size. So although 29 are there, but there are different sizes. So the real problem was 5%, 15%. But on the SRs, I have a point as a banker to say every security receipt is my treasury investment, which I have to evaluate every year end. And at times, if the resolution is not happening in line with the expectation, then as a banker, I am further required to provide for it. So what I saved by having of the assets, see, by having of 1 lakh crore, I saved a capital of not less than 50,000 crore, because most of these assets must be in the bad and doubtful category, where
Yeah.
50% provisioning has been made. So while I saved 50,000 crore, if I am required to provide for the SRs, and that is where I feel that uh, somewhere the result ARCs are seen more interested in stripping and making money out of it rather than resolution. I think now
Mhm.
all those things are getting balanced properly. A lot of resolutions are happening, and going forward, as you have heard that a lot of attempts have been made at the national level to create ARC for the infra fund to be created. Bad bank is being talked about, so on and so forth. That is nothing like but ARC. So I feel that ARC as a concept has well jailed now in the system, and will go forward.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting take. There is a lot of traction on the ARCs for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we have got a lot of clarity on the one-time scheme, and apart from that, even on the other related topics. The final question I want to raise to uh, both our experts is what further improvements do you think could have been included in the one-time scheme? What are the further suggestions on that? Mr. Kamath, you want to start?
Yeah. Thanks, Prakash. A couple of points, which strikes me is, uh, you know, under this present scheme, NBFCs are not covered.
Mm.
Uh, Post, a couple of large NBFCs getting into problem. The NBFC sector is, facing, severe stress, particularly on the, liquidity front. NBFCs are expected to extend, whether it is moratorium or whether it is now one-time restructuring, to their borrowers. But the NBFC's own borrowings from, the banking system is not eligible for, restructuring. So there is, uh, according to me, there is no level playing, field for NBFCs, and I think this is something which, in my personal view, I'm not sure what is the logic for this. Uh, to have a relook at this particular aspect. When I read the RBI circular as well as the Kamath Committee report, there is some inconsistency with regard to the timeline by which a couple of financial ratios have to be met. The Kamath Committee report says it is FY23. The circular says, it is FY22. Therefore, there is a need for clarity on this so that the banks can, move forward without any uncertainty. Third is that there is also no clarity in the circular with regard to the techno-economic viability report requirement or the right of the bankers to reserve the right of recompense, etc., etc. So there needs, I'm sure going forward, clarity will come. But I find these are areas as of today which are grey. I have gone through a couple of bank circulars which do talk about TV report requirement less than 100 crores. In the case of MSME, it says banks' own technical officers will study the techno-economic viability and come out with a report, etc., etc. But I feel there has got to be ample clarity, on this. The third thing, the next thing that I would like to say is, I have mentioned it earlier. This scheme must cover all viable units irrespective of the length of overdues as on 1st March 2020. Because by default, some of the viable units which are otherwise viable will get omitted. They will be driven to the circular of June 2019, and if they prefer restructuring under that, the accounts will get downgraded into NPA, and it will have a cascading impact on provisioning requirement, capital requirement, adverse impact on the bank's P&L, etc., etc. As a layman, I think this is what needs to be relooked. Lastly, I have read reports, in the newspaper. Particularly, I have no first-hand, information. The NBFCs which are now Ind AS compliant, unlike banks, the credit losses, provisioning is at a different level, and it is argued by the NBFCs that they are already providing more than 10% in respect of possible potential credit losses, and another 10% under the scheme is an extra burden on the balance sheet of the NBFCs. I think this is one area, genuine area, which needs to be relooked, and improvements need to be brought out. This is my take on this question. Back to you, Prakash.
Yeah, I think all were quite valid, Mr. Kamath. Mr. Mohan, you want to summarize on your suggestion of
Yeah.
scheme?
I strongly echo what Mr. Kamath has said, and I would like to add. See what happens. The viability, as we discussed, depends on the success of the whole ecosystem, and thus government should also support and ensure that the entire supply chain in a MSME industries, backward and forward linkages. See, we have been talking about it for years together, but we'll have to create a good ecosystem that all MSMEs are able to survive by providing a proper support at the backward linkage and the forward linkage. What we have been talking about, the cluster approach, industry-wise clusters, industry-wise issues. I think there is a great need to understand the ecosystem segment-wise and try to support through the government measures. As you have done in the agriculture, very rightly pointed out, 1 lakh crore support you are giving for creating necessary infrastructure, maybe by virtue of warehouses, maybe by collective farming, maybe by mechanization, or the similar lines, create a proper ecosystem for the MSMEs to survive, ensuring that they got the proper support of the backward and forward linkages. Coming to the large projects, I have a desire which I've been talking about it all the while. As the large number of projects are languishing, be it a road project, be it a hydel project, be it a power project, be it I mean different kind of project. Now these projects, if they are allowed to be languished and pushed to the different agencies for resolution, I think government must chip in through the PPP kind of arrangement and make sure that the projects which have been run through for 30-40% of the activity or investments are completed in all respects. You are all from Hyderabad. You are the hub for all infrastructure project companies. And you all know about it. So my request is that there is no room for the projects to remain idle. You deal with the promoters the way you want to deal with it, but make all the projects productive, make all the projects productive to the optimal level, so that, as Mr. Kamath has been talking, I echo it, the national wealth is protected. If all these measures are taken, let me tell you, the measures which you are taking, standalone cannot support it unless you are creating the whole ecosystem to support the growth going forward. I think that is what is from my end. The last, we all have been talking about preparing ourselves for welcoming all those who are moving out of China. I also feel that that's an opportunity for inviting the good investors and the manufacturing units, which can provide a lot of employment opportunities in the country. And the last to close is uh, need to address the Bharat problem and not India problem alone. We will have to make sure that we create a lot of employment opportunities in the rural India, which can really balance the whole problems what we have seen on the migrations.